Nothing will ever frustrate me more than when brands release a campaign that features disabled people and there is no accessibility elements. I think when we show society the positives that AI brings, particularly as an accessibility aid for disabled people, the greater autonomy it provides, the independence that we can have, the safety we feel, it really resonates with people. The only way to get it right is to have us in the room.
This is the What Comes Next podcast with your hosts, Keely Catwells and Dana Randall, where we use real stories to explore the future of accessibility, inclusion, and the ideas shaping what comes next. These episodes are sponsored by Making Space and Level Access, powered by AW360, Advertising Week's year-round content platform.
On the show today, we have the one and only Molly Burke. Molly's going to discuss the story behind her partnership with Meta, Ray-Ban, and Be My Eyes. We'll also talk about the brand impact of authentic disability representation in influencer marketing. Molly is a blind speaker, advocate, Forbes 30 Under 30 creator, and author of memoirs It's Not What It Looks Like, and most recently, Unseen. Molly, first, thank you so much for coming on our podcast. I wanted to kick this episode off with a bit of a personal story on how I personally got introduced to you, Molly Burke. So it was 2019 and it was the Shorty Awards in New York City. They were announcing, I think it was the Lifestyle Content Creator Award, and coming onto stage is a young woman with bright purple hair, a black strapless dress with some sequins, sky-high high heel shoes, and of course, her stunning guide dog. And the thing that really stood out to me was you were winning a category that was not specific to disability or accessibility. And I wasn't familiar with you yet, but immediately, honestly, it was your purple hair that stood out to me because I was actually rocking hot pink hair at the time. So I was like, this is my kind of person. You know, you said something on stage that really stood out to me, which was if you are, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but if you're, a member of the disability community and you want a career in entertainment and you don't feel like there's room for you or a place for you, keep going, keep at it. There is. And it became a very full circle moment for me because at the time I did not identify as someone with a disability, but it was in 2021 that I actually became more visibly and physically disabled. I want to credit you for you actually being part of my early education on disability awareness, and just first personally, thank you. But it brings up an interesting question around disability representation, especially in advertising and marketing, and how important it is for brands to kind of authentically engage with disabled creators. So you've helped several brands really authentically reach large, often untapped areas of the disability market, including the Ray-Ban Meta collaboration, also with Be My Eyes. If you can kind of start off by telling us a little bit about how that partnership came to be.
Well, first off, thank you for sharing that story. You have no idea how happy that made my heart. You also have an impeccable memory because that is exactly what I was wearing that night.
Yep.
And I just love that. Thank you for sharing. That means so much to me. I love hearing origin stories of how people found my content. And it's so interesting to me how many people found my content before becoming disabled themselves.
Yep.
Or before loving somebody who is disabled. And I think it's so interesting, those stories, because we often talk in the disability community about how majority of disabilities are acquired through age, accident, or illness. And you don't think about that when we think of disability as a society. We always think of people born disabled, but that's not the case for most people. So I love that my platform has become a place for people to get comfortable with disability before they even face it themselves. So thank you for sharing that. It means so much to me.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to work with so many incredible brands throughout my career. Ray-Ban Meta being one of them that I've been working with quite a lot over the past year. And I've worked with Meta on many campaigns over the years. And when the Ray-Ban Metas came to market, I could not have been more excited because it really filled a gap for blind people. The technology that existed before those came out that was anywhere comparable cost around $4,000 to $6,000, looked like a technological accessibility aid instead of just looking like a fashion piece, and didn't do nearly as much as what the Ray-Ban Metas do. So when they came out for $300, looked like a normal trendy pair of glasses, and was able to do so much on Gen 1, it was truly groundbreaking for the blind community. And I believe Meta said that blind people use the AI assist on the Ray-Ban Metas 11% more than anybody else. So it really has been groundbreaking for the community. And it was amazing when they reached out and we were able to start working together. And that actually came to be not because of my longstanding relationship with Meta over the years, but because of my really separate relationship with Be My Eyes, which is an app that's existed for quite a while now on your smartphone that allows you to use the camera on your phone to connect with a sighted volunteer. And it's a great resource. But when you're on the go as a blind person, you almost always have one hand busy with a guide dog, with a cane, with sighted guide. So being able to now use the Be My Eyes integration within the Ray-Ban Metas completely hands-free was an absolute game changer. And the folks at Be My Eyes went to the Meta team and said, hey, we'd really love for you to work with Molly on sharing this new integration. And the Meta team was like, absolutely. We worked with Molly a lot. So it was kind of this perfect melding of these two organizations that I've been closely working with coming together.
I think brands can sometimes be afraid of talking about disability because they are terrified of saying the wrong thing. Was there a challenge at all navigating that with this campaign, or did you feel like Meta gave you full creative control to share your lived experience, to speak about disability in the community in the way that you wanted to?
One thing I really appreciate about Meta and a lot of the brands that I've been able to work with is they come to me because they know that I know how to speak to my audience better than they do. And I've had the odd experience, not with Meta, but with other brands where they've maybe given me a brief with language that I would not use to describe disability, maybe using terms like differently abled. And immediately I will push back and say, hey, this is not phrasing that we like to use. I would not feel comfortable doing that. And overwhelmingly, anytime I have had to do that, brands have thankfully respected it. And that's the only way I would work with a brand, is if they allow me to speak to my audience the way that is authentic to me as a creator and to me as a disabled woman.
I love that. And one of your videos, which is probably one of my favorite videos that you have ever done, was when it was part of this campaign, and it was a video where you gifted a pair of Ray-Ban Meta glasses to one of your blind supporters, Marissa Hurt. And I must say too, Marissa is a great friend, and I've been a small part of her journey as she's completed Ascend and has been a part of the Making Space community, and just watching her go through that journey and knowing how much of a light you have been and how much of a huge piece of her journey you have been has been so incredible to see, and just showcases also the importance of role models. But when you gifted her that pair of glasses, it was incredible to see. And I think I'd just love to know more about what inspired that idea for the video, a bit more about that relationship, and also the response from Meta, maybe when you pitched it or when you came up with that concept.
Meta provided me the creative brief for the campaign, and in the brief, it was very broad. They just said, make a video giving the glasses to somebody who would love them. And there's lots of people who would love Ray-Ban Metas. They're
Mm-hmm.
a great piece of tech. And for a lot of people, they're fun. They're a cool thing to play around with.
Mm.
I could give it to my partner or my best friend or my parents who would enjoy it. But immediately I knew I had to give it to somebody in the disability community, and ideally somebody who is blind, because I know firsthand as a blind person the impact they make. And so I knew immediately I need to find somebody who would deeply benefit on a broader level than just having fun with them. And I thought of Marissa because she's been a huge supporter of mine. She had recently come to one of my book signings uh, for the release of my memoir, Unseen. And we had been, communicating for years through the DMs and the comment section. And she's just always been such a huge supporter of mine. And I love to find ways to give back to my community whenever possible. So I kind of like arranged this little surprise day. It was perfect because she had reached out to me that very day. I think that the creative brief came in. She DM'd me and she was like, "Hey, I'm going to be in LA for a Making Space event." And
No
I was
way.
like, "Oh no, I won't be available, but I'll be in your neighborhood the next week for work." And I just kind of like made this thing and I was like, "Since we'll not be able to grab coffee when you're in town near me, we'll grab coffee when I'm near you." And I just like, made a thing of it. And yeah, it was so amazing. It was really exciting to be able to give those to her.
So special.
So, for those that maybe haven't seen the video that you published with Marissa, you were sharing different ways that Be My Eyes made travel and just everyday activities more accessible for you and for Marissa as well. What was the response from the community to this campaign? And what was Meta's response? What kind of feedback did you receive?
It was overwhelmingly positive. I think in general, the video was very heartwarming, but beyond that, I think we're living in a world where people are pretty scared of AI.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we show society the positives that AI brings, particularly as an accessibility aid for disabled people, the greater autonomy it provides, the independence that we can have, the safety we feel, it really resonates with people. And so overwhelmingly, the response from the blind and disabled community was incredibly positive. The response from the community at large was very positive. And Meta, really benefited from that. I think we need to remember that content isn't just about metrics like views. It's also about audience sentiment, shares, likes. These smaller forms of impact can actually be larger than getting millions of views.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you mentioned, AI and ultimately AI is driving a lot of innovation around assistive technology, but there's also some uncertainty and some hesitancy that I think the community has with that. And it's quite nuanced. Can you talk a little bit about even your creative process on how you were going to approach that, knowing that it is a nuanced topic and there's a lot of mixed, you know, perspectives on the role of AI in assistive tech?
The word nuance is my favorite word. I use it all the time because I think it's easy to think of the world in black and white, but I try to focus on the gray area, which is the majority. Most of life is the gray area in between. And I approach every piece of content that way, is not just thinking about the polarity, but what is the stuff that might be missing, that context that's important. And so when it comes to talking about these things, I try to just focus on the facts. The reality is this is a tool that benefits me in many ways. These are the ways it benefits me that I cannot find elsewhere. And that's why this matters. And that's why it's important. And kind of just sharing the realities in an as honest a way as I can, even if that means I'm not using a clickbaity intro that's going to get more
Mm-hmm.
views. It's more important to me to be authentic than it is to create something that's just going to be purely view driven.
Yeah, I love that you mention authenticity and, clickbait and things like that. We're definitely living in a very much, let's say attention economy. And do you feel that your audience is kind of moving away from that hyper curated, hyper produced content and craving, more honesty and more depth? And like, what do you think audiences are craving now more from you as you continue, you're still a content creator?
I think society in general, more than ever, is looking for authenticity, for the human experience, for connection and community. And thankfully, that's always been, for 12 years that I've been on the internet, what I've brought. I have always known that the only currency I have with my audience is my honesty and authenticity. And the moment I sell that for a brand deal, the moment I sell that to get more views on a video, I've lost my brand. I've lost
Mm.
everything I've built, and nothing is worth losing that.
Yeah.
So I feel, thankfully for me, I've been perfectly positioned my whole career, even when it wasn't trendy or popular to be honest and vulnerable. It's just who I am. It's who I've always been, and it's the brand I've always built. So I think we are coming into a time when that is what viewers are seeking, in part because of AI and because people not being able to trust what's real and what's not. When they find something that feels real, they trust it.
I I think you are someone who is so open and so honest, both online and also in your recent book too, and I think people and brands really appreciate that. How do you think disabled creators are uniquely positioned to bring depth to brands and authenticity?
It's a great question. I think that there is a tendency for social media content creators to curate a very pristine image,
Mm,
right? We've all talked about the highlight reel that we see on social media. People post their life looking as glamorous as possible and as glossy as it can be, and they leave out the rest. Disability just isn't like that.
mm,
Like, I can't make my life look glossy when every day I'm facing discrimination, when every day I'm facing inaccessibility, when every day I'm facing ableism, and I'm having to hack the system and come up with my own workarounds and accommodations and be flexible and pivot. And so no matter how much I try, the reality is the existence of disability just isn't ever going to be this sexy thing that the general public desires. And that's okay. So it's kind of made it impossible for me to just put forth this glamorous, glossy life. It's made it a necessity for me to share the full spectrum. And, disability is not a monolith, which also means disabled content creators are not a monolith. And not everybody is going to put forward, their best effort to be authentic and genuine and real. But I think overwhelmingly, majority of us do, because we know that our work carries a greater weight. We are representing an underserved community, an oppressed community, and that means it's a big responsibility to make sure that the content we make is serving the community well. And
mm.
again, not everybody will do that right, but most of us, I think, try to, with our best, put our best foot forward. And so I really always personally shared the full spectrum of my lived experience, which is to say the good, the bad, the ugly. There's beautiful, wonderful moments to my life as a disabled person, but it's also hard and it's messy and it's stressful. And that's life for most people. But most people on social media don't show all of that the way I, as a disabled creator, do, and many other disabled creators do.
Yeah, I appreciate that so much about you. And I think you also give other creators kind of permission to show that as well. So I think it's truly important. I do want to pivot a little bit for a second because we've talked a lot about content creating and, you showing your experiences navigating a largely inaccessible world, but you actually do a lot of work consulting with brands and influencing how products get designed. And I'm a designer, so this is one that, connects to me personally, something I'm passionate about. When you're working with companies, what tells you that they're considering accessibility from the beginning instead of it being retrofitted? And can you talk a little bit about the work that you do consulting with brands?
This has been one of my biggest passions over the past few years, is pivoting more into consulting. Making content and public speaking is something that I'll always love and I'll always continue to do. But the result isn't as tangible. I get messages and DMs or people coming to my events and telling me the impact, but it's not like crafting a product that will be on a shelf, that will live on for the next 20 years, and somebody who's never heard of Molly Burke can buy it and be benefited. And like that brings me so much joy. The idea that I can go sit in a boardroom with a bunch of people and talk about how do we design this product better? How do we make this product more usable? And then in a year from now, it's sitting at Target and a random person buys it and is like, wow, this product is so well designed. And I get to be like in my head, like, oh, I know I did that. And that just like, it just makes me so happy to know that it's like, it's tangible. It's a physical thing I can grab and hold and say, I was a part of something. So I've been loving consulting on inclusive packaging and product design is primarily my wheelhouse. My biggest niche would be like beauty, lifestyle products, but I've touched many different categories. And yeah, it's been incredible. But I would say it really depends what part of the process I'm being brought in on. Sometimes I'm being brought in to a fully existing brand and they're like, hey, can you help us fix everything? And I'm like, ooh, okay, this is going to be a 5-year plan. We're going to take it step by step, versus being brought in early on where I can really help build something from the ground up. It's a very different experience of how quick it's going to be and what's possible. But I recently have consulted for a company who was building both a doll and a character around that doll. And it was really fun because they came to me with a pretty well fleshed out product that was not great, candidly. And I think they just wanted me to come in at the end and like validate and maybe
give it the Molly approved stamp.
Exactly. And make a few small tweaks. And I was like, we have to go in and clean this thing all up. And thankfully they were so receptive to that. And what was fun was being able to kind of push them to think of it in new ways. Like one thing that was really important to me was establishing what is this character's backstory. Even if the audience never knows the character's backstory, we designing and creating it need to know, because that backstory informs her identity as a disabled character today. Was she born disabled? Did she become disabled? What was the condition that caused it? Because that might change the way she physically appears. So all of those things were really fun to talk about that they had just never even considered. They had thought about disability as a very binary thing. And I was going in there and being like, nope, it's there's the favorite word again, nuanced. And there's so much individuality to disability. And we need to create this character with that individuality and that authentic experience in the back.
So I'm sure we could make probably an entire podcast episode just around this next question, but I'm going to kind of put you on the spot and say, if you had to pick one thing that you see companies consistently still getting wrong when it comes to designing products or experiences or campaigns, when it comes to being inclusive, or whether they're designing it with the disability community in mind, what's that one thing that you see as this recurring mistake that brands make?
Nothing will ever frustrate me more than when brands release a campaign that features disabled people and there is no accessibility elements. There is no audio description. There's no captioning. There's no alt text. If you are going to profit off of us, you better make sure we can consume it.
Well said.
Mic drop.
Very, very well said.
We can end the episode here now. That's it.
It's unbelievable how often this occurs. It frustrates me to no end the amount of times, even just say on social media, I'll watch content from a media outlet and the entire video is about blindness or blind people,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll just have text on the screen. And I'm like, would it have been that hard to add a voiceover? Like, it wouldn't have changed the viewer experience at all, except now the community you're featuring could actually consume that content.
Yeah, it's like
It's just
performative
very,
in all
very
the wrong
frustrating.
ways, right? It's like,
Mhm.
Yeah, and you can just tell that no disabled person was involved in the making of said product or advertisement.
Right, and maybe the only way they were involved was as on-screen talent, and I can
Yeah.
say as somebody who's been a consultant, who's been behind the camera, who's been many times just on-screen talent, the person with the least power in that room is on-screen talent.
Yeah.
We don't get to push back on post-production, on direction, and so it's very important to have disabled people involved in that editing room, in the hiring room, behind the scenes. We need disabled people at every touch point, so we're making sure that it is authentic and it's not tokenism that's actually harming the community more than it's helping.
Yeah, agreed. And the other thing I think I've seen, one pitfall that I really dislike within companies is when they rely on disabled people in the organization who they just happen to be disabled. They're working on like creativity or design or something that is totally not disability specific. Like that is not their role. And they rely on them and ask their advice. And it's like, yes, they may be experts in their own disability experience, but they're not experts at disability and accessibility at large. And that's where they have to pull people in, like you, like Molly. Like they have to bring in those experts. Like that is imperative.
Absolutely. Disabled people just having a disability does not mean they are qualified to do something like consulting on accessibility.
Yep. Yep. I
right, you
think
can
there is
share your
a
personal lived experience, but you can't represent the entire disability community. And
yeah.
it's
Correct.
just not
And like
possible.
for me, when I'm, say, consulting a beauty brand on product packaging design, I'm not thinking what's helpful for me, Molly, one blind person.
Hmm.
I'm thinking of this full spectrum of disability. I'm thinking, how will this design be for somebody with limb difference? How will this design be for somebody who's neurodivergent? How will this design be for somebody who's visually impaired and has some usable vision remaining versus me who does not? So I am going into that consulting trying to think of the full spectrum, or who can I pull in from my community who can speak to that? I'm not thinking of it from this narrow lens because it's my job to make sure that I'm not.
What brands or companies have genuinely impressed you?
I think when it comes to advertising, I'm really impressed with a lot of tech brands. I think,
Hmm.
like, the Apple commercial that we saw a few
Yeah.
months back with all of the disabled college students, that was the kind of representation we want. Seeing Waymo do lots of really cool advertisements on social with lots of different disabled content creators. The Ray-Ban Metas. So a lot of tech companies really impress me, and I would love to see lifestyle brands take a lead from the tech companies.
What advice would you give to brands, marketers, media executives who want to include disability in a way that feels real and authentic instead of performative, but maybe they're struggling or they feel a little intimidated?
The only way to get it right is to have us in the room. Do not make decisions for us because you don't know what we need. You don't know what's right. And so making sure that at every touch point you're having disabled people involved truly is the only way to get it right. And we know that having disabled people involved overwhelmingly makes things better for everybody. Disabled people are incredible employees, not just pawns for your marketing gain. We are incredible people to have on your team for so many reasons. We are adaptable, flexible, we're so innovative, we're resilient, we're incredible communicators. Um, these are skills you want on your teams. And when you have that voice in the room, they can help shape something that is not going to be tokenism, that is not going to be using disabled people, but is actually going to authentically reach the community and the market you're trying to tap into.
And what would you like to see next for disability inclusive marketing and advertising campaigns?
greater inclusivity and authenticity. I myself have even faced experiences where my team has heard things like, well, if we put Molly on a billboard, nobody will know she's disabled
Mm.
because I don't, quote, look disabled. I've had very big brands tell my team, well, our budget to pay disabled people is lower. Verbatim, that was said to my team. So I would love to see a world where my disability doesn't have to be seen to be included. We're seeing disabled people adequately paid for their labor. We're not lucky for the opportunity. You're lucky to have us involved.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
And maybe final question, what comes next for Molly Burke?
Well, I'm very excited to have my children's book coming out. Fall 2025, I released Unseen, How I Lost My Vision But Found My Voice, which is available everywhere books are sold. And now I'm coming out with my children's book on October 13th, 2026, which is all about guide dogs and service dogs and teaching kids about what their job is, how to safely interact with them, the do's and don'ts in a fun, engaging, and entertaining way. And I'm really excited for that to hit the market. Also continuing to expand my work into specifically the beauty space, whether that's colored cosmetics, skincare, body products, hair care, working with brands in all of those sectors to design products that are easier for everybody to use. And I'm just having so much fun doing it.
Incredible.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Molly, thank you so much. And it was so great to finally get to meet you virtually. I think you always approach things with a kind of a realistic sense of optimism. And I think that that's super valuable for other people to, hear and learn from.
Thank you. I do consider myself a realistic optimist,
Yes.
so I'm glad that comes through.
For sure.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for checking out the What Comes Next podcast, sponsored by Making Space and Level Access, powered by AW360, Advertising Week's year-round content platform. Subscribe now so you never miss an episode on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are available.